So I have to start, before I start my story, I have to say that like Robert, I'm a nurse, and after I tell this story, I'm sad to say that probably all of you are going to think that nurses have really shitty jobs. So how many of you put up with crap at your jobs? Right? Raise your hand, right? Okay, so I put up with a lot of literal crap for the last 20 years as a corporate writer. But I can tell you that I'm happy to say I've never, ever had to put up with, figurative crap, but I can tell you that I've never had to put up with literal crap. And as in literal crap, I mean poo, crap, you know, shit. So why did I find myself at the age of 42 sitting at the dinner table having this conversation? My daughter, hey mom, what's that on your pants? Me, I think that's poo. And really? Being okay with that. So let me back up a bit. A couple of years ago, I decided that my new husband, my two teenagers, my two step teenagers, my preschooler, and my more than full-time job were not enough, and I enrolled in nursing school. Let me explain. As you found out from Robert, nurses are poo specialists. We measure it, we document what it looks like, and yes, we clean it up. We clean up a lot of it. So here I found myself on the second day of my third semester clinicals. My clinical instructor gave me my patient assignment with the usual information: patient name, age, gender, admitting diagnosis. And then she said, he has a rectal tube. A rectal tube? Well, at this point, I have only a vague idea of what it is and what it does. Now, I know all of you did not decide to become RNs, so I'll spare you the details. But if you understand the English language, you know what it does. So I walked onto the unit that fine fall afternoon with my head held high and all the eagerness of a student nurse. I took in the familiar smells, the bleached linens, the antibacterial soap, the hand sanitizer, the institutional food, and a new unfamiliar scent. If you could describe a smell as malevolent, that's the word I would use, because this wasn't just a bad smell, it was an evil smell. And when the answer to what is that smell is your patients, you know it's going to be a very long day. Well, the curtain around my patient, let's call him Mr. X, was drawn, which is always a very bad sign. But I ducked into this very small space, and I was nearly bowled over by an odor that is almost impossible to describe. It was definitely poo, but it was so concentrated in its intensity that you could feel it in your pores and in your clothes. My poor patient looked lost in this mountain of linens and pillows. And the rectal tube, well, it had obviously failed in its mission. But the poor nurse working with him looked so overwhelmed that I swallowed my gag reflex, grabbed my gloves and my washcloth, and within 10 minutes we had him restored to rights. Well, as right as you can be when your life involves a rectal tube. So the day went. I did what I came to call the great poopy dance over and over and over until 1900. That's 7 p.m. for you lay people. By the end of the day, his roommate had requested successfully to be transferred to another room because it smelled so bad. So I went home, plopped down on my lazy boy, and began regaling my family with tales of my really shitty day. I was expecting maybe an, oh, gross, or a general confirmation of what a really wonderful human being I was for doing what I did. And instead, my usually self-absorbed 17-year-old looked at me and said, wow, that must really suck to be him. Well, I'd gotten so wrapped up in how hard I was working and how bad it smelled that I failed to see what my 17-year-old saw, which is that this patient was a person who had to live with the knowledge that he smelled so bad that nobody wanted to be in the same room with him. I was really ashamed of myself. So the next day, I focused on the patient instead of the poo. I discovered that Mr. X had a son who loved to sit at his bedside and tell him stories. I discovered that he loved the Phillies, but thought Brad Lidge had really lost his touch. I also discovered that he wished more than anything that he could wear real underwear again. I even got to help the nurse replace the failing rectal tube with a new, improved, more efficient version. And as we were contorting ourselves around his bed, trying to get this thing in place, he said, you people have the worst job in the world. And I said to him, well, I yelled because he was also pretty hard of hearing. That's what we're here for. It's our job. And he said very sadly, it must be the worst job in the world. I said, well, I love it. And I meant it. That was the night I went home with poop on my pants. And that night, I did get an, oh, gross. And I even got a pat on the back from my long-suffering husband. But I also knew that no matter how bad my day had been, it had been far worse for my patient. And if what I had done had made him a little less uncomfortable and given him a little bit more dignity, then it was worth a little poo. It's my job, and it's not the worst job in the world. It's the best.